There we go. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be birding for the rest of us. This is mostly geared for beginning birders. Going to do quite a bit of talking about getting birds in close to you, and we're going to go over some equipment for beginners, go over some feeders and all kinds of things with a huge list of tips at the end. So, as we all know, bird photography is not the easiest thing in the world. So what you have to find is ways to get closer to the birds, certain photo gear, definitely you need good lighting, and you need to know a little bit about bird behavior and some of the best places for taking bird photography. Taking the sharp pictures of the birds and getting them out in the open is not easy because, as we know, they're very small, a lot of them. They don't hold still. As I have learned many, many times, they like to sit in branches, behind something, in the shade, behind a leaf. Very difficult to get a good clear shot of them. And they spook very easily unless they've been around people a little bit, like in your own backyard. So how do we get around these issues? Well, some people go to the extreme to get close bird photography, and they disguise themselves and get in the water and do all these crazy things, but that's not going to work for around here. And I wouldn't even want to get in the water in a dry suit to do this. This man is crazy. But there are other things. You can do birding blinds. There are some little tent-like things that you can buy, set up in your backyard or on your property. And then some places that you go birding actually have permanent bird blinds that you can use. And these come in very handy. I discovered this one just north of Bosque in Bernalillo County, maybe about 25 minutes north of Bosque.
Oh,
And we'll probably be going to that spot next year. So how do we get these birds in closer? Well, yeah, you have to either use some type of feeder with bird seed or suet, bird baths, maybe some water. Bird houses sometimes work. I have not used bird houses here, but I did use them quite extensively in North Carolina for bluebirds. You have to have some safe places to perch, and you need plants to bring some of the smaller birds in, like hummingbirds. So I have several seed feeder types around my house. These are like cage feeders, and they're very handy for keeping out the doves and the pigeons and some of the other bigger birds from coming in and eating all your expensive seed. Quail would get in there if they could. Thistle, I have a thistle feeder, which is really good for finches and lesser goldfinches. This one I put in black oil sunflower seed for the cardinals and the pyroluxias. They can squeeze between those little bars pretty easy, but it keeps the bigger birds out. And that is the big thing here, is keeping the bigger birds out. I do have a lot of pigeons in my neighborhood and a lot of doves. Right now I have so many white-winged doves, it's just crazy. There's lots of different kinds of suet. I prefer like a peanut butter type for these little cage type suet feeders. They're nice because the birds can hang on to them, but you want to make sure, especially here in the summertime, is to get the no melt variety. And then you get these cylinder feeders. A lot of times I get what's known as a cardinal favorite, but pretty much all the birds like it. It has lots of seeds and nuts and uh, different other things in it, and the birds just chow down on it all day long. Now that one the quail can get to, and that's okay. They don't eat too much of it.
Get the type with or without insects.
Without. I prefer my birds to eat the insects that are flying around my house and keep the insects down. But you get all kinds of different birds that'll go onto the suet feeder. As you can see here, we've got a little ladderback and a Gila, but many of the different bird species will come in. But you can also use your suet as sort of bait in a way to get birds to come to your perch. So this was taken in Portal, and you can see they have a little stick growing right underneath the suet, and the birds go down on the perch, and then they sit there and think, I need to get up there and maybe get some of this good food. And then while they're doing that and they pose a little bit, you can get a really nice picture with a nice background. Of course, the background is always important. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. So that's kind of like a kind of bait 'em in sort of thing, but the birds just love that stuff. And here's another example, similar idea. You've got a different branch and you got the suet right below it. And then, when the bird's deciding he wants to go up and get the suet, then you can try to get a picture of the bird. And usually you get some nice posing. You can see this one, I got a real nice view of its eye. It's sharp. It's got a nice sparkle to it. Nectar feeders, very important if you're into hummingbirds, but many other birds will get on the nectar feeders, including the woodpeckers, orioles, house finches. I have grief. I can't tell you how many verdin I have around here this year. Must be dozens. They're kind of cute. I don't mind them. But I set up a little area this year with these little tiny single feeders, and the hummingbirds seem to like them the best because there's no competition with the others. Since I have several of these, they all can kind of share without fighting. This is like a standard feeder. This was actually at Mount Lemon at Henry's back porch, little Anna's hummingbird. And again, the Rivleys, this is also up at Henry's in DJ's place, which we'll go into on the 4th. But one of the things that's nice about when you use the nectar feeders for bringing in your birds is the birds are going to either perch and fly to your nectar feeder, or they're going to get on your nectar feeder and then fly off, which makes it a lot easier to get a nice picture of a bird in flight. You kind of know, because they do go back and forth, so you kind of get a feel for where they're going to be. So you can pre-focus approximately where they're going to be, and you're ready to go when the bird shows up into that spot. Again, this a broadbill, same kind of thing. It comes to the feeder. This was when I was experimenting with a flash. And you can see just off the hummingbird feeder, you get a nice picture with a flash. And I had a slow shutter speed on this one. But one of the other things that's nice is you have some branches or some perches not too far from the hummingbird feeder. So after they get their nectar, a lot of times they like to go sit for a few minutes. They'll kind of clean themselves off. They'll have their tongues go in and out as they lick all the nectar off their beak or the pollen. So this gives you another opportunity to try to get a nice, clean image of a bird that's perched. And so you can see from some of the perches that I have not too far from my bird feeder, I'm able to get some nice hummingbird shots perched. And this little guy's been coming to my house now for 3 years. Another thing that you can do is you can get some old like stumps or old gnarly logs, and you can put bird seed in the cracks, or you can spread on a little peanut butter or some they have some spreadable suets that you can put on there. If you do that with the peanut butter, you want to put it on the far side where it doesn't show in your picture. And then when the birds come up and they start scrounging around trying to get the seeds and things, then you can get you a nice picture of a bird posing. So that's another handy little way of setting up something in your own yard. In many of the places we go to, especially in Portal and Madera Canyon, they have some setups like this that make it really easy for you. You can just sit in your chair and just wait. Again, here is another log feature, and then you have a perch close by, and the birds will go onto the perch, and then they'll make sure the coast is clear. They'll go over to where the feed is. In the interim, you can get a nice, good picture like this black-headed grosbeak on a nice perch, and you can move around a little bit so you can get a nice background. Peanut butter, you can just spread peanut butter on lots of things. Typically, they do it on like a tree trunk. You'll see that at the Patton Center. That's one of the places. They'll do that a little bit at Madera Canyon. I think this was at Jasper's. But you'll get your creeper birds, you know, your little nuthatches and things like that, that like to climb up and down the trees. They will love peanut butter on some type of a stump. And again, you can, as they're coming to it, you can get a nice picture. Jelly, grape jelly. Lots of birds love grape jelly. Some people just take the top of their nectar feeder off and fill it with grape jelly. Other people will use like a small mason jar and use a piece of copper tubing and make a hanger out of it. But boy, when you get the birds that like the grape jelly, they can go to town on it, and they look kind of funny sometimes as they have purple all over their beaks. Oranges are very popular, especially with the orioles. They are huge attractions for orioles, but some of the other birds will come in to eat the oranges too. I had no idea that the verdants liked oranges, but I put out 2 orange halves every morning, and then I have to do it again in the evening. They're going to be mad because I'm not out there tonight, because they just clean it out. It's just amazing how fast they will clean out those orange halves. And there's lots of different feeders. You can see this one on the right. That's one I have just outside my office. So you'll see me sometimes, even on some of our Zoom meetings for the club. You see me turn to the right and start looking this way. It's because I've got something that showed up on my feeder, because I have a feeder right outside my office. This is another one. I bought this one, I think on Amazon, and I was not happy with the way it had a spike to put the oranges on. So I just drilled a hole and put a big giant nail spike through there. And it works much better, and the birds are happier. And here again, now, this was an interesting thing that happened last year. I had an overripe peach, and it's like, well, I don't want to just throw it out. And I had enough stuff that the javelinas would eat. So I thought, well, let me put it on one of my spikes out here and see if anything will eat it. Oh my goodness, the Gilas just went nuts over it. So, so that's a new one for me. I had no idea they would eat peaches. Bird baths, very important, especially this time of year. Lots of the birds are needing water. They like to take a bath once in a while. These things are like magnets this time of year. And then you want to make sure you have some sort of a nice bush or maybe a small tree nearby, especially for like cardinals and things. They like safety. So, you know, they'll go right from the bird bath into this very thick bush here and hang out for quite a while. I don't know how they get in there because there's spikes all over that thing. I hate trimming it because of the spikes, but unfortunately I need to do it again. And of course, when you get a bird bath, you never know what's going to show up. Pretty much every day now I get this Cooper Hawks comes to one of my 3 bird baths. I have 2 in the backyard and 1 in the front, along with a fountain out front. Now, some people will actually have a water feature that's like a drip that goes all the time. Jasper has one in Portal. So this is a cardinal getting ready to go over to his drip water feeder, which you can see here. It's nothing elaborate, but while you're sitting there in the chairs watching his yard, you will see a whole bunch of birds come all around where this little drip is. And the drip goes into like a little pond area, which also gets a lot of birds in it. So a nice little drippy water feature is a nice thing to add to your yard. One of the things I started doing this year, I started having a lot of little ants getting into my nectar feeders. So I started putting out these little things between the feeder and the hanger to hold water. And I got some fairly large ones so they wouldn't evaporate very quickly. They last about 2 days. But one of the things I found out by accident was how many of the birds like to drink out of it. And so first thing in the morning, I'm out there with my little water can filling all these little ant deals, and the birds just go nuts for the water. And of course, the more birds you have, the more opportunities you have to get some nice bird shots around your house, which is what you want if you need to do some bird practice too. Plants, a lot of people don't think about plants, but when it comes to especially hummingbirds, any of these type of plants, a bee balm, some type of a salvia, a penstemon, some sage, any of these type of plants, which I have all around my backyard, also help to draw in the hummingbirds. Coneflowers are good once they go to seed. Then you'll start getting your lesser finches and your house finches, and some of the sparrows will come down onto the coneflowers to eat some of the seed heads. And you're just trying to create an environment to where you have many, many more opportunities to take bird pictures. And I will tell you that after you do this for a while, some of the birds get very used to you and you can get very close to them. So like this little hummingbird here on one of my purple salvias, I probably was 5 feet away and I took this with an iPhone. And you can see here, any of these tubular type plants, they love to get into. So as you may have noticed, I'm also into gardening. So, and they kind of go hand in hand when you're doing bird photography. This purple in bloom, black in bloom is also another nice salvia. Everybody thinks that only red bring in the hummingbirds, but I have to tell you, I have just as many hummingbirds hit these purple flowers as the red flowers. And then, you know, by bringing them in, you get more opportunities for perches. The birds come in on the perches before they go to the feeders, and you have an opportunity to get nice pictures with clean backgrounds. Obviously, you want to have your perch a nice distance away from the background so you get a nice smooth, blurry background. Same with the cactus wrens. They come in to eat some of the suet, and then they hop up on some of these bushes. This one, I wouldn't normally call it a perch, but these cactus wrens and the curve-bill thrashers just love to get on top of it and look around the yard, but I prefer not to use it for a perch because you can kind of see how I have some flat edges on the little stumps of the sticks from where I've trimmed everything with a hedge trimmer. Ideally, you'd want to break them off by hand so they look more natural. And this is the bird feeder. I have a little setup. I have a water dish. I have orange slice. I have little nectar feeders, and I have those cups I was talking about. This is just outside my office. I took this with an iPhone just through my sliding glass door, and just to show that you know, if you do the right setup, you can get some okay images with an iPhone. And we'll go more into the iPhone stuff later. So this is my current backyard. And let me see if I can get, yeah, here's my cursor. So in my patio, I have a nectar feeder here. I have the contraption you just saw outside my office window. I have a bird bath over here. I have a cage feeder here. I have a suet feeder here. I have some nesting material here. I have another feeder here, and I have another orange slice here. I have a little place for a quail block here. I have what I call the Parthenon here. That's that wooden feature that I showed you. Then I have my thistle over here, and then way over here to the right, I have another cage feeder and another nectar feeder. And yes, it takes me about half an hour every morning to take care of all this stuff. So it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it. So bringing in the birds closer to you, you're able to get a shot, maybe through a doorway or a window, a good picture without really disturbing the birds. So shooting through an open window obviously is much, much better than shooting through glass. A single pane is kind of okay, but you'll see here on this next picture that a double pane is not real great. And obviously if you can remove the screen from a regular window or just open your slider, that's much better. So this is one that I took through my slider, a double paned window, and you can see it's not sharp. The doubleness of the glass just makes the picture look weird. Sometimes I get some good pictures through the window and sometimes not, but this one was kind of far away, and it was over on the bird bath. In my previous house in North Carolina, my bedroom window, I had built these perches, and what I did was I found a dead stick. I put it on a spike, and I put it approximately 20 feet from my bedroom window, and I took the screen out of this window, and then I could hide up there and take pictures of the different birds that would land on this perch. And of course, I had feeders close by. And it turned out that during the Christmas bird count, I had 15 people in my bedroom all looking through that window to do a bird count because I had more birds than anybody on the plantation.
Jack,
So you want, yes.
yeah, a question from Tony about the yellow line on the prior image.
Oh, is that showing up?
Yeah, that was something that somebody else did, I think, while Jack was presenting.
Oh, I don't know where that came from.
It's an annotation on Zoom.
Oh, how do I get rid of it?
I think it might be the host who needs to do it, Marianne.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I think when I first saw that, I saw the name Melanie next to it.
Well, I'm not sure how she could do that.
I don't know.
That was interesting. Okay, let me see. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, I can see it's recording now. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, if you use like clippers on your perches, you can see here, that just doesn't look natural. So if you can, and you're creating perches, I recommend that you just snap them with your fingers. Of course, that works a lot easier on something that's dry and kind of dead versus something green, which is probably not going to snap like that. But it just, if you're trying to make it look natural, that's kind of what you need to do. Okay, now it won't let me. There we go. Got it. Okay, so now that we have the birds in closer, how do we take their picture? As you can see, this little hummingbird here, so used to me. I just had some wires with some lights over my table outside, and I'm probably 3 feet away from this hummingbird. She just doesn't care, just ignores me. So, in one of my previous camera clubs, I did a survey, and people indicated that for bird photography, they really wanted to take pictures of birds using their cell phone. This doesn't work very well for small birds. Tame birds you can get in close. It works okay for big birds, but it doesn't work really well for tiny birds. Some of the reason is, our eyes see at about a 50 millimeter, 55 millimeter equivalent lens. And the main lens on an iPhone is 24 millimeters. So it makes the bird look twice as far away. So that's not very useful. And the 24 millimeter is the lens you use when you want to shoot a raw image, and which you would want to do if you want to crop your picture. But as I've recently learned, shooting in RAW on an iPhone and getting it off your iPhone and into a PC is kind of difficult. Not a lot of fun. I'm not sure that I'm going to be using the RAW feature all that much unless I used a third-party app like Lightroom's new or Adobe's new Indigo or something like that. The ultra wide is only 13 millimeters, and the 5x, which is a real telephoto sort of zoom, is 5x. There is a 2x on some of the Pro Max phones, but that really is a digital zoom, and small pictures, and it's not very useful other than snappy shots. Some of the Samsung cell phones have an equivalent of a 240 millimeter. That one, I think it runs about $1,000, $1,200, like most cell phones now. I do know some people that are using that primarily for their photography now, even on safaris. So, but I'm kind of locked into the iPhone thing. Anytime you use the digital zoom feature on your phone, where you use your fingers to kind of pinch and zoom in, it goes into a digital mode. It's not optical, and you can't do anything with those pictures. If you want to crop them, you can forget it. They just look terrible. So I set up a little stuffed bird in my backyard, and these following images were 10 feet from me, just to kind of give you an idea of the perspective of using these iPhones. So here I am 10 feet away, and you can see I have this little stuffed little toy bird in my bush here. And that's with the 13 millimeter lens. And then on the right is the regular 1x lens. Then the 2x lens, and you can see it's already looking a little fuzzy because that's really like a zoom. And then the 5x lens, which is the equivalent of a 120, looks a little better. I still don't recommend that you zoom and crop in on those because there's just not a lot of data to work with. And I did, yes, Chris.
There are third-party lenses.
I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yep, we got a long ways to go here, folks.
Okay. Sorry.
Hopefully you're not getting too bored.
Not at all.
I'm going to cover a lot of areas. So, the 48 millimeter 2x crop, you can see there's just not a lot of data there. Compared to like a 50 millimeter Canon 48 megapixel cropped, you can see lots more data, especially in some of those outside feathers. So for a mirrorless or a digital SLR, the 35 millimeter equivalent lenses, I'm going to go through samples, again, taken from the same spot 10 feet away. So this is what a 50 millimeter lens is, basically equivalent to your eyesight. This is the same with 100, the same with a 200. And these aren't cropped, these are taken with actual lenses. 300 millimeters, 400 millimeters, and look at that nice detail in those feathers. 500 millimeters, 600 millimeters, and 800 millimeters. I could have gone further, but I wouldn't have been able to keep the bird in the frame any longer. By using teleconverters or teleextenders, I could have gone all the way up to 1600. So here you can see it. I've kind of put them all together so you can see the progression. So as Chris was saying, there are attachments that you can get for your iPhone. Now this is kind of dated. I did this presentation. Of course, I've updated it a lot since then, about 8 years ago, to 3 different camera clubs in North Carolina. So I've updated it a lot this week and last week and the week before. So you can buy these goofy little attachments. This one was like a 12x. At the time, they didn't really have some good lenses that you could do this with, but there seems to be a little bit of advancement in that now. So this 12x zoom, I took some pictures with. They were just awful. But they do have some of these lenses. I'll show you in a second. They go all the way from 12x all the way up to 60x, and you clip them onto your phone. There are several semi-expensive brands that you can do this, and they come with their own case or adapter that go right onto your whatever model of iPhone you have. They work much better than the cheaper ones like this, and some of that is because they're really hard to line up with your lens. And normally you have to put it with the 1x lens and not the 5x lens. So you kind of limited, and you kind of want to do that anyway, because with the 1x lens you can shoot in RAW, which gives you 48 megapixels, so you have a little bit more the tolerance for cropping. So
Jack?
this is,
Jack?
yes, sir.
People who want to use their iPhones, are
Mhm.
they really interested in carrying another device like that?
Well, they're very small.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're only like maybe 4 inches long, maybe 5, and they're very little. So it almost like a little monocle kind
Okay.
of thing. So this is like one of the higher end ones you can get on Amazon for $169. It comes with the case, and you can clip on that. So if you think of it, you already have an iPhone, and for basically $170, you could do some nice bird photography if you can get close to the birds. And we have plenty of areas here that you can do that with, and especially with the bigger birds, like at Sweetwater, some of the herons and things like that. So maybe somebody doesn't want to spend $4,000 on a nice DSLR system. They just want something to play with. This is a good way that they can get into it and try it, and maybe they want to move up later. So a lot of the downsides to this, it's for some of them it's really hard to get the lens lined up properly. Some of them are not too sharp, but some of our great software that we have now can fix that. They do exaggerate the camera shake quite a bit, which creates blurry images, especially if you're just using your iPhone on autopilot without using one of the third-party features where you can adjust your f-stops and your shutter speed and your ISO. And for some of them, you may get a little bit of light coming in from the side, which can create some lens flare, especially if you haven't cleaned your lens on your iPhone. Any kind of grease or anything from putting in your pocket or wherever will create tremendous amount of flare on those iPhones. So I always carry a little lint-free cloth and clean. If I'm going to use my iPhone, no matter where I'm at, I always clean the lenses. And you can see here, with some of the zoom ranges that you can get with it, it's not bad. If you were just traveling and you didn't want to take your big kit with you, this might be an option for you. And you can see, 20 to 60x is pretty good zoom ratio. Now, I'm sure we've all heard of digiscoping. This is where you attach your iPhone to a spotting scope. Many of the manufacturers now have their own adapters for your model of iPhone that goes onto a spotting scope. Some people that are just birders may already have a nice spotting scope, and they just want something to record the bird that they saw. And these work very well. You do get a round picture that you have to crop, so you do want to give yourself a little room around the bird for cropping into a square type picture. The universal adapters are not real good. They don't hold on well. They take a lot of time to set up to get your camera lens in just the right spot. Swarovski, of course, makes a very nice outfit for series birding using your cell phone. And this is like an example of what that outfit kind of looks like. You've got the little adapter that goes onto the end where the eyepiece is, and then you hook on your phone and you can take pictures. Another new thing that's come out just not too long ago is the ability to get an adapter to hook to your binoculars. Now, a lot of us do have binoculars, so if you don't want to spend the bucks till you want to get into serious bird photographer, this is maybe another way to try it. And maybe just, for playing around in your backyard. And you can see how that works. You get a nice adapter, it goes onto the end of your binoculars, and again, you use your iPhone. Another thing to think about if you don't want to spend thousands of dollars is a point and shoot or a bridge camera. Now, when I first did this presentation, they weren't very good. They have made some improvements, especially with the focusing and the low light level and the sensors, but they're never going to replace a good mirrorless camera. Now, you can get some that have a nice 20x, 40x, maybe at least that is a minimum. Of course, the more power you get, you're going to have problems with camera shake, and I'll go into that a little later. And many of the cameras will only go to 3200 ISO, so it makes it difficult in low light situations. But yeah, that's usually not a problem around here. Like I said, they don't work well in low light. The lenses don't let in as much light. Focusing on a small bird can be difficult. For smaller birds, you're going to want to focus on something close by where the bird's going to be. And then when the bird comes, then you can move over to it and get it in focus pretty quick. Otherwise, a lot of times it just won't focus. And camera shake is a problem at these higher powers. And sometimes these things got such a tremendous zoom and such a small sensor. The bird's so small, you can't even find it in the viewfinder. I've had that problem a few times. So Nikon has a Coolpix 950. It's around $700, $800. It's an 83X, 24 to 2000 millimeters. I show you a couple pictures later that I took with a P900 several years ago. God. Yes.
These not have a good anti-shake system?
Not really.
Okay.
No, they do have some image stabilization, but when you're at 2000 millimeters, just the slightest shake of your hand and you'll move off a bird. And they do not work really well in low light. A little cheaper option is a Panasonic or a Lumix. I've used these as something similar to them in the past. Picked up some at Costco a lot. I mainly used it for travel pictures, and once in a while I would use it for a bird picture, but to be honest with you, the bird pictures never really come out that good. Canon has a power shot, 65X, zoom, $700. But again, if you don't want to spend the big bucks, this is an option, and maybe you don't get a great picture every 50 pictures, but then you get one, and that's all you need. Minolta's got a little cheaper one, and so like this one is pretty reasonably priced for $350 to $400 for a zoom that goes to 1568 millimeters with a 20 megapixel sensor. That's not too bad. Except for some of the problems that I spoke about earlier. I mean, this is crazy. Here's a little Kodak kit with a bag and a card and something that goes almost to 1000 millimeters with a 20 megapixel sensor. That's just crazy for $186 to $219. But it's out there if you want to play with it. Just be aware, it's going to be okay, but it's not going to be great. Another option is something like a monocular Canon zoom. It's only a 12 megapixel, but it goes to 400 millimeters. Might be handy for just quick bird spotting identification if you're building a life list. Then you can always go back a generation and go back to our DSLRs. You can buy a Canon 7D Mark II used for $500 to $650. I used this camera extensively for about 5 years. It was a great camera and I got amazing pictures with it. And I set that up with the EF 100 to 400 lens, which was a fantastic lens at the time. So, you know, there are other options. You can get a used Sigma that goes on it, a 150 to 600, or, you know, with pretty decent f-stop for, you know, just under 900 to around $1,000 used. So, you know, for $1,500, $2,000, you can get into something a little better than spending $4,000 or $5,000. Another option that's coming up now is for people that just want to see birds. You can buy these bird feeders that have little cameras built in that have AI that'll tell you what the bird is. You don't even need a birding book, and they're solar powered. Just have to remember to go put out birdseed once in a while. Now these are some images I took, like I said, about 8 years ago with the P900. And you can see it's not bad, it's not great, it's not as sharp as what I have now, but it was terrible in low light. I took it to Peru and at a kind of a jungly area, not too far from Machu Picchu. I absolutely couldn't even get the camera to focus. It was just too dark and too low light, and it was absolutely useless. And as soon as I got home, I sold it. But, you know, it took good pictures when you had good light. I took pictures of these birds out, you know, near the beach, the Forster's terms. I did get one good picture that I was happy with this bird in Peru. And, you know, around my house, woodpeckers and things like that, when you had good light, it did a pretty good job. You want to put it on a, like, spot focus, and yeah, none of the animal, you know, pre-programmed things work worth a darn. You pretty much got to put it on like a spot focus to make them work. And one day I was out scouting for a nice place to shoot some Milky Way astrophotography. While I was standing there looking over this bay with some sailboats, thinking this is gonna look really good, you know, the next time the Milky Way's up, this barred owl came and landed right next to me. And it was one of the coolest things that ever happened to me. And it didn't care, and it just started cleaning itself. I got a pretty good picture with the P900. So, picture taking wise, just some very, very basics is try to have the sun at your back, have the wind in your face, and remember that the larger birds are going to take off into the wind. This will help knowing which direction that they're going to fly off into. That's really handy for things like herons and hawks and things like that. The previous generation of cameras focused mainly by using contrast, and so they would look for light and dark areas and then try to find the closest subject to the camera. With mirrorless cameras and with our AI now, we don't have to worry about that so much, because it was kind of hard to focus previously on some of these birds. It was hard to get a good picture of the eye. So you can see on the left, it's a little fuzzy. That was, you know, taken with the old DSLRs. And on the right, it's with the mirrorless. And with the AI, you can set it to be animals and eye focus. It does such an incredible job now. It almost feels like cheating. And having a good catch light, it draws you into the bird picture. It's probably the most important thing with having taking a bird picture is making sure the eyes are focused and you have a good catch light. On my mirrorless camera, and I recommend it for bird photography, is what they call back button focus. So normally when you get your camera new from the dealer, you press the shutter. It's going to adjust your camera settings for your exposure. It's going to focus wherever you have your focus point set, and then it's going to trip the shutter. For back button focus, you still continue to do the exposure and trip the shutter, but you remove the focusing capability and you put it on one of these buttons here on the rear of the camera. Now, a lot of people will just set up either this button or this button, so when they press it, the camera is going to focus on wherever your focus point is. Some people will do 2 back buttons. In my case, I have 3. So I have this one that's set up for a single point animal and eye detection focus, which I use most of the time for my bird photography. However, there are times where the bird's buried in a bush or a tree, you don't have a good angle at it, and you need to kind of dial in the camera to get a little closer to the bird. So this button here that I've put a red circle on near your function button, which I think it is a function button, I use that for a single point focus. There's no animal, there's no nothing. It's wherever I put that point using my joystick, it's going to focus right on that spot. And sometimes that's what you need to get your camera into that perfect spot near your bird or right on your bird with this before you can go and then hit this button for your AI autofocus. Now this one in the middle I have set up really for just birds in flight. It's like it focuses on the entire frame and it looks for a bird to focus on. So that's how I have that set up. Different cameras are going to be set up differently. Some cameras don't have a lot of buttons back there that you can program. Canon does, and some of the other Sony and Nikon I'm pretty sure do too. So that's kind of how I have my camera set up. Whatever works for you. So bird lighting, side lighting can be a real problem. As you can see from this bird, you've got the shadow caused from the light coming in from the side. Its whole head is in shadow, its body's in shadow. There are times when side lighting is really good, and it would have been on this picture if I had been moved over to the right. Then the right side of the bird would have been all lit up beautifully. So you're going to get to see some not so great pictures taken by Jack as examples. Usually I have them all deleted, but I found a few. This is another example of the side lighting, and you can see the whole face is in shadow. Backlighting can be very good, but usually what happens is you create a silhouette. Now that really looks good. The silhouettes look great, especially in the evening when you have some pretty color behind the birds or maybe in the morning. But for just during the day, with a gray background, it doesn't look like that great. Front lighting is what you want a lot of the time, but as you can see, I have a bird here, not very cooperative. And again, you can see where I have broken off the branches, so where they look more natural versus chopped off with clippers. You can see the frustration in bird photography here. Overhead light, noontime, it's the absolute worst time of day. You can see this one, it's a little past noon, so the shadow is kind of on the side, a little bit of this bird, this nice Gambel's quail. But here's one, you can see the top knot is putting a shadow right on the side of the bird. And the eyes kind of in the shadow. It's just not a good time to take bird pictures, maybe if you were in the shade. This year, we went to the Desert Museum, and I pretty much deleted all my pictures. We had really strong overhead light, and you can see, like here on the right, I've got half a shadow because like this owl, it's got some poofy eyelids. So half the eye is in shadow. It just looks terrible. I was so disappointed when I got home. I didn't realize it at the time. And I got home and went, oh, geez, the whole day was shot. Here you can see the eye's not lit up at all. It's in the shadow. Just not a good time for shooting birds. Here's another one, overhead light. Great light on top of the top knot of this little cardinal, but then look right just below it. Ugh. It's not evenly lit. It just does not look good. Now, shade can be good. While we were having our coffee at the Desert Museum and maybe a little snack, this nice cardinal hopped around in the shade and posed for us. You can see it got a nice even light. You can really see the feather structure, nice color. The only thing is that when you shoot in shadows, it gives a little cool tone. You may have to warm up the picture a little bit. And then a typical bird, you wait all day to try to get a picture of a nice flycatcher, and he doesn't come out at all. And you're frustrated for the rest of the day. Well, talking about places to go, I highly recommend Henry's blog. I've put the blog website there at the bottom. Henry has been everywhere in southern Arizona and east Arizona, and he probably has a blog on any place that you would want to go birding. He has some nice pictures, he has some nice write-ups, so I highly recommend you go check out Henry's blog when you have a chance. If you're thinking about going somewhere, I would say go there first. Another great place to look is on eBird. You can explore by species or explore by regions. You can kind of get, if you're looking for a specific bird in your area, you can dial it down and see if they're in your area this time of year that you're looking at. I use eBird a lot. And then you can also get on their rare birds alert. You sign up on eBird, and they will send you a daily email that'll tell you the birds in your area. So I have one for Pima County and one for Colusa County that gives me an email every day. And then I have one for the entire United States that'll show me all the birds in the United States. Alaska and Hawaii are included in that, not just the continental United States. And so sometimes you go, boy, I really would like to go to Wisconsin to see that warbler. It's handy for future trips. Mount Lemmon. I'm not going to go through all the places to go birding because, as I just said, you can look at Henry's blog or eBird and find some good places. But Mount Lemmon is a special place. It's nice and cool in the summertime, and you can get some great bird pictures, especially around Henry's feeders. In the past, we've done some walks on a trail up at Mount Lemmon, and it got some nice raven pictures. Sometimes we get little bird pictures. Another shot up at Henry's. You can see these birds were fighting, as hummingbirds often do. Agua Caliente is a very great place to go to in the wintertime. We get lots and lots of ducks that come in, and you can get low and at eye level for a lot of these ducks. Getting at eye level, it just brings you into the picture and helps you connect with the subject. And I've taken lots of nice pictures at Agua Caliente. And of course, reflections always add to it. One of my tips is don't cut the reflection. If you get a nice reflection, make sure in your picture you have the full reflection. Of course, we got nice, widgeons and things. But there's lots of different birds that show up at Agua Caliente. And luckily, it's only about 30 minutes from me. And sometimes there's big birds like, blue heron, great blue heron. And then you get flycatchers. And Gilas. There's a pair of nesting Gilas and the saguaros there, usually every year. And of course, the Phenopeplia. Ash Canyon is not maybe an hour from my house, so it's a good area. They have lots of feeders and lots of flowers, water feature that the hummingbirds take little baths in. It's a great spot to go birding for a couple hours. You can see they have flowers set up. Just a nice location, lots of little benches and things that you can sit on. Flowers, different birds. Beatty's Guest Ranch is not too far from there. It's a little bit of a hike from where you park, not too bad, maybe a quarter mile. And they have lots of bird feeders, and it is one of the places that you can see the violet-crowned hummingbird and sometimes a calliope, little hummingbird. I think I also saw the white-eared hummingbird there too. But just a fabulous little spot. When I went, Linda and I went there right after Ash Canyon, and we were the only ones there. Ramsey Canyon, not too far away. Great place to hike and take bird pictures. We've done treks here a couple times to the riparian preserve at the Water Ranch. Again, what's nice is you can get right down to the water and shoot pictures at eye level. That's where your flippy screen comes out really, really handy. Some of us have a little trouble getting down low. That flippy screen makes it really easy. A lot of these places, you could lay down and take pictures, but it's kind of muddy and yucky. And since a lot of times we go out to eat for lunch afterwards, I don't recommend that. So using the flippy screen is the way to go. You can see here, it's got a nice reflection. That's a fun place. I wish it was just slightly closer. Oops, I did not change the title on this one. Sorry about that. This is the Desert Museum. Again, you can get in really close. As you can see, this crowd, they bring the birds in with bait. They fly, free fly. It's a great place to practice birds in flight, getting close-ups. You can use your iPhone pretty easy. The birds are large size. Wonderful place. I love when we do our treks there. And of course, you know, they have all the raptors. The raptor flea flight is really fun. The Reed Park Zoo, you can get a few exotics there. So that's something to keep in mind if you want something a little different than our normal birds in Arizona. You can get some nice peacocks, ostrich, just lots of different things there. I don't even know what this is. It looks like some sort of barbet, but that was in the aviary. Sweetwater, we've all been to Sweetwater, so I'm not going to show you a lot of pictures, but you never know what you're going to find at Sweetwater. It changes all the time. Of course, the vermilion flycatchers, they love the pond area and all the stick-em-ups there. So, as I mentioned, some more tips for bird taking is use your flip screen. Makes it easier than lying down in the mud, and it makes for a much better picture. And you know, you can go kind of lift it up, lift it down a little bit to try to get a nicer background if you need to. Shooting during the golden hour, that is the best time for birds. Either in the morning or late in the day. Morning is usually best because the birds have been perching all night, sleeping, and they wake up hungry. A lot of times they're a little more squawky and way more active. So they have to eat. I mean, especially hummingbirds, they wake up super hungry and they're going to hit those nectar feeders right away, or the flowers. And the light is, you know, as we all know, it's just magical. And you can see here, like at Bosque, morning sunrise blast off. Again, Bosque. Of course, you know, who doesn't love these guys? And of course, in the evening, the light makes them look almost red. And again, the evening light, it's a little different than the morning light. Overcast days, boy, you have to love them. Rainy, overcast, cloudy. Rain, maybe not so much, just depends on how hard it's coming down. But wow, you get such a nice diffused look on your birds. Hang on there. And even lighting, no shadows. Just, that's one of my favorite times to shoot. You can see, you know, I mean, there's no shadows on this bird at all. The colors just pop. You have to take advantage of those days. It's like having a giant reflector overhead. So one of the things is you want to have enough shutter speed, especially for your fast moving birds, minimum of 2,000th of a second. If you want to freeze a hummingbird, you got to start off, I've heard some people say 1/3500th of a second, but really for me it's 4,000th and maybe a smidgen more minimum. For slow moving birds like a heron or maybe an owl, 1/500th of a second, it probably works pretty well. You just want to make sure that you use a shutter speed that's like 1/100th of whatever millimeter you're using. So for example, if you're using a 500 millimeter lens, you want to use a 1/500th of a second at least. That's a little better now with built-in stabilization, but you know, you want to make sure that you get something that's sharp and in focus. And of course, blasting a few images really helps too. It increases your odds of getting a good image. Pay attention to your backgrounds, especially if you have some sunlight coming through your background. It makes all these hot spots that are really difficult to fix in post-processing. And if you don't do something with them, then it makes your eye go to those bright spots in your image, and then it distracts from your bird. Clean, smooth backgrounds is much, much better than a busy background. You can see here, this is a busy background. There's just too much going on. It kind of detracts from the bird. But if you get a nice smooth background, your focus is right on the bird. There's like nothing to compete with it. With your heavier lenses, especially as we get a little older, you may want to consider a tripod or a monopod, because when you got like a 600 millimeter heavy 6-pound lens on, it gets kind of hard to hold throughout the day. So you might need a little help, especially on windy days. Some of these bigger lenses are just so hard to hold still. You may have to push up your ISO some more than you think, especially for fast moving birds. And if you're moving, if you're on a boat, you may be moving up and down, left and right, forward, backward, and then you have a moving bird on top of it. You have to use a faster shutter speed. I ran into this issue several times on cruises where you would be on front of the boat shooting some pelagic birds flying by, and some people would come up to me and say, "Why are your pictures so sharp and mine are all blurry?" And I look at their ISO and they're, trying to do like landscape photography. They're shooting at ISO 100 or 400. And they're shooting at 1/200th of a second. That just isn't going to do it. So after I would get them to bump up their ISO, then they would start taking better pictures. You can tuck in your elbows right to your side really tight. That'll also help steady your lens a little better. Of course, we have our noise removal tools now. DxO, Topaz, Lightroom built in now. It's an enhanced feature, which works really well. I find to use it a lot now. So you can raise your ISO sometimes a little more than you'd like, and the pictures look fabulous. If you're having trouble focusing, as I mentioned before, go to a single point, get it, on the bird's chest or something close by, and then switch to your AI type focus for animal and eye detection. Pro capture, I think, is what they call it on Olympus, or pre-capture is what they call it for Canon. It works great for unpredictable birds that take off super quick, like a hummingbird, birds that are on a perch, you think they're going to fly, or maybe they're on a nectar feeder or something like that. It works really good. The downside is you take a lot of images. Canon has a new firmware update where you actually can now dial in how many pre-capture images you want to take. And the way it works is you hold your shutter halfway down and it starts putting in a buffer pictures even before you've pressed your shutter. And then when you press your shutter, like on the Canon, it'll take half a second of those images before you press the shutter and add those to what you're shooting. So in your first second, if you're shooting 30 frames a second, you've just taken 45 pictures, and you can have to go through a lot of picture culling with pre-capture. So I used it a lot to start with, but as time has gone on, I only use it now in certain situations, but I absolutely love it when I need it. Other things that you can do is learn your bird behavior, learn what time of year they're going to come in, learn what type of cover they like, what type of trees, what type of bushes, what type of habitat. Do they like to be in a ravine? Do they like to be up in the mountains with the trees? Do they like to be by a lake or a pond? Learn your bird behavior. I always shoot wide open, except for if, I'll probably bring this up later. If I have a couple of birds sitting on like the same perch and they're not on the same focal plane, I will change my f-stops to try to get a little more depth of field. Also, if I'm shooting birds that are flying, I'll do the same thing. If I'm shooting more than one bird. Try to manage your distance between your subject and the background if you can. The more distance you have between your subject and the background, the better chance you have to blur the background and get that nice smooth look that I talked about earlier. Try using teleconverters or teleextenders, depending on your brand. They will only work on certain telephotos, so before you buy one, make sure if you have a telephoto lens that you would like to use it on, make sure the manufacturer has the teleextender that works on it. Not all zoom lenses will do that. Canon only has, I don't know, half a dozen that you can use them on. The 1.4 works really great. Just keep in mind you're going to lose a stop of light, so you know, be shooting at a higher f-stop, and that creates more depth of field, which makes it a little harder to blur the background. So again, more distance. I've used the 2.0. I have the 2.0. I almost never use it. The problem is you get such a long telephoto range, and you try to shoot birds that are super far away that you probably shouldn't try, and then you get things like atmospheric interference, dust, moisture in the air, and then you get the picture and it doesn't look sharp, and you're going to lose 2 stops of light versus 1. So I can't recommend the 2, but I find the 1.4 does come in very handy. You want to watch your edges of the frame for clutter. You know, a little branch sticking in here, a leaf, or maybe something. If you can move over to the side or up or down a little bit to get that out of the frame, that helps a lot. Especially when you're doing your post-processing. I see a lot of pictures where people did not look around the edge, and there's clutter which takes away from the subject. I like to use the rule of odds. I plant that way. I'll put 3 plants or 1 plant. I won't put 4 plants or 2 plants. I do the same thing with birds. I'll shoot 1 bird. I'll try to do 3 birds. I hardly ever shoot 2 birds or 4 birds, maybe even 5 birds. So I definitely use the rule of odds a lot. If there are multiple birds in flight, make sure you use separation between the birds. If they're overlapping, just don't do it. Wait till they break apart a little bit and then take your picture. As I mentioned before, if there's a reflection, make sure you have the whole reflection in the image. Don't clip it. It just looks terrible. Shoot your pictures differently. Move around. Change your zoom setting. Try for a different background. Try for different light. If you have a cooperative bird, move around a little bit. Try for a silhouette. Just try something different. Work the area. For small birds, I generally like to put them in the corner of the frame and give them a little free space to look out of. Try doing some more environmental type pictures. Include some of the perch they're on, the tree they're on, the bush they're on, where they're located, maybe at the beach. Try to work in some diagonals. Sometimes that really helps add to your picture. Don't shoot in too tight. Leave yourself a little room for cropping and getting rid of those things on the edges. Filling the frame, that works really good for symmetry type shots, like a full-on, straight-on headshot or something like that. But normally filling the frame just doesn't cut it. People want to see a little about where the bird's surroundings are. Try to manage that head angle. Make sure you're on the correct side of the bird depending on the light. You don't want to be on the side with the shadows. You want to be on the side with the light, so you get that nice sparkle in the eye. And of course, we all know how cooperative birds are. Set the exposure for the bird, not for the background. So make sure you have, if you have a super bright background, you're going to have to use some exposure compensation. You want to expose as close to the right as you can get. You get way more pixels to work with on a slightly overexposed picture than you do on an underexposed picture that's, kind of black. It will just look so grainy. And some of that, it doesn't really have to do with the sensor. It has to do with how hard your camera in the camera's chip has to work to make the image bright enough to show on your sensor. And so you get a lot of electrical stuff going on, which is really where the noise comes from. It's not really from the light. Make sure you have your blinkies or your highlights alert on. You want to make sure you don't clip your highlights. Now I will say your computer screen and your computer is a little more forgiving than what shows on your blinkies and highlights. If you have a tiny bit of clipping that shows in your camera, remember that LED isn't quite as good as what your computer is. So you can possibly recover a little bit of the blinkies. Keep an eye on your histogram. Make sure you're not clipping too much to the right or to the left where your shadows are. Practice using your exposure compensation to get the correct exposure. I will sometimes go a third of a stop underexposing in fairly good light to make sure that I'm not clipping the highlights, and I find sometimes it gives a little extra saturation to the bird, especially on very colorful birds. Ethics: don't do anything to harm the bird. Be extra careful during nesting season. You don't want to do anything that messes up with the season or their mating or where they're building a nest. One of the other things is to be very patient. It can be frustrating. I have gone and seen a bird I wanted a picture of so bad, and it just doesn't cooperate. And you wait and you wait and you wait, and sometimes you get it. Perseverance pays off in the long run, normally. Practice, practice, practice. Know your menus, know your dials, know your buttons, know what they do. If you have some free time, sit around, put something on Netflix that maybe you've watched before, so you don't have to pay so close attention to it, and play with your camera. Know what all these things do. If you don't know what something does, go ahead and look in the manual. Check your settings when you get out of your car or pull your camera out of the bag. Things can get changed easily. I have had this happen to me so many times, especially traveling. I put my camera in the bag, I pull it out of the bag, I'm ready to go, and my autofocus switch is off for some reason. Or, one of the dials is moved, or sometimes even worse, the camera's turned on and your battery's dead. So make sure you check things out as soon as you get out of your car, because I've had about everything happen to me that's possible. One of the keys is when you're approaching some of these spookier birds, walk very slowly and quietly. Don't be talking. I know it's hard sometimes, especially when we have a group setting. If possible, approach at an angle and do not make eye contact with the bird. Yeah, they're like all the other animals. Once you make eye contact, they go, I'm out of here. And they will leave. When you're approaching your bird, make sure your camera is already up and ready to go. So you're holding it up by your face. I can't tell you how many times I've made this mistake. I forget to do that. I get to where the bird is. I lift the camera up and the bird goes, see ya. It spooks the bird big time. Use the silent shutter mode on your camera if birds are easily spooked. I know a lot of people don't like to use the silent shutter because they burn off a lot of pictures. So just maybe go to a slower burst mode and just press the button in short bursts instead of just holding it down. If you get a very cooperative bird, work it. Do some of the things that I talked about before. Move around a little bit. Try some different settings. Maybe try a silhouette. Don't leave. Take advantage of that bird. Sometimes you get a rare bird, or maybe it's like the first time you've ever seen that bird, and you're quite a distance away. Take a safety shot. You're just recording it to maybe put on your life list if you have one. Just take a shot so you at least have something. Maybe you can crop it in a little later, maybe not, but at least you have something to show that you were out that day. For safety's sake, don't be chimping. I'm sure we all know about chimping, looking at the back of your camera, looking at your pictures while you're walking down the trail. I can't tell you how many people I've seen do this and trip. They've tripped over a root or hit a rock and they fall and they break their camera, they break their collarbone, break their wrist. I mean, it's awful. So don't be chimping while you walk. That's my safety tip for the day. For birds in flight, start with easy birds. Start with things like vultures or herons or eagles or hawks. They soar. They're fairly easy to take pictures of. For some birds, as I mentioned before, you may need to increase your depth of field. I find that happens a lot if I'm shooting multiple birds because they're not on the same focus plane. Use back button focus. For some birds, like especially in birds in flight, to keep it in focus and have it not jump to something else, I'll keep tapping my back button focus button just to keep it on that bird and keep it in focus. Some people like the bird wings up or down. That's a personal choice. Most of the time I like the wings up, but that's just me. I've taken some with them down too. Try to, do something different. Get creative. Try to do a slow shutter pan. Go down to like 60th of a second for a fast moving bird. Try to pan with it and hit that shutter. Sometimes you get a fabulous picture. I hate to say it, most time you don't, but it is something to try. Other places to consider that maybe you haven't thought about before are wildlife rehab centers. Many big cities have them, and usually for a small donation, they'll let you come in and take some bird pictures. And sometimes they'll even come to your organization for a small fee, and they'll bring a few birds and hold them out and put them on perches, and you can take some really nice close-up birds that you wouldn't normally see. When you're out of town, look for birding places. Sylvan Heights Bird Park in the Scotland Neck in North Carolina. is an absolute amazing place. They have so many rare foreign birds. They raise them. They give them to other zoos for donations, and then they get some money so they can build more aviaries and feed these birds. Fabulous place. My wife was on their board of directors for a couple years. And just one more thing, when you go out, have fun, because that's why we do it. And that is all I have for now.
Thanks, Jack.
Anybody have any questions? Let me stop sharing, okay. Hopefully not too many.
Jack,
Yes.
in terms of adding lenses to like an iPhone, I mean, I've read up on some of this stuff. I don't own any of them. I probably wouldn't bother buying them. I mean, one of the main things is if you upgrade your phone, that lens may not work anymore, depending on the case, or you may need a new case or whatever. But even the ardent iPhone shooters, people like Rick Sammons and his wife, Susan, if he's going somewhere, there's going to be wildlife. He will have a mirrorless over his shoulder and a longish lens, depending on what he needs, because at the end of the day, it's just, there are a couple like Moment makes some good lenses that you want something that's going to screw into a case, and like Jack said about eliminate the light, and you want the number one lens because that's the money lens on all the cell phones.
Yep.
And honestly, unless you've got a physical disability where you can't pick up like even a mirrorless camera, and my Nikon Z50 is a little crop camera with a 16 or with a 5250 lens, which is a 375 equivalent. I mean, that's not all that heavy at all. And so and if you are looking at a lens like that, do a lot of homework and research and make sure people actually use it for wildlife and bird photography, because
I don't recommend them at all.
Yeah.
But it's an option. I'm just giving people options.
Yeah. I've heard people that, buy these things and they say, and then there's the hassle of carrying that lens around, right?
Well,
what are
they
you
are
going to do?
pretty small.
Well, you put it in your pocket. I mean, it is a lens, so you
Yeah.
don't want to bang it against things and stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I mean, where some of these lenses really score is for video, and they make anamorphic lenses if you want to do that cinematic, that wide angle thing where it's sort of blurry on the sides or whatever it is. And, that's different. But they really don't do that well in telephoto.
No. And, as I said, I did a survey several years ago and people wanted to know how to do it with an iPhone. And all I can do is point them in that direction and say, you can do it, but it's not going to be that great.
Yeah.
Steve, Shaw?
Yeah, Jack, wonderful. Thank you. I have a number of questions that came to mind during the talk. I've heard discussions, some in Nampa and some with other people, talking about the ethics of feeding animals, birds, and using feeders and so on. Any particular thoughts, on that? I gather that backyard feeders are in a way a different situation, and no problem. But anyway, do you have any general thoughts on that?
I really don't have a problem with that. Where I would have a problem with it would be like baiting something with a dead animal or something like that. Or maybe like a mouse, a live mouse, like people do with owls and things like that. That, to me, that's just wrong.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And I try very hard to keep my feeders clean and use high quality seed and things. Let's face it, where we're at, there's not a lot of options for these birds.
Yeah.
I think we are kind of doing a little bit of service for them, because some of these birds, we're on the brink and they are making a kind of a comeback. And I think residential feeders do help with some of these birds.
Another question I'd written down, how often do you clean your feeders and the baths and so on?
Well, I have a little trick that I do for the bats, which I didn't get to do tonight, is just before sundown, I will go out and take my feeders down, and I will set them on a table. And for some reason, the bats will not bother them. It has to do with the way they fly or something. They will empty out my feeders. There's no question. If I leave them hanging, they'll be empty tomorrow. But if I set them on a bench or a table, they won't touch them. And the funny thing is, the hummingbirds have no problem with it. They will be there in the morning sitting on them. Thank you very much.
Interesting. With the peanut butter,
Mhm.
is there any and the jellies and so on? Are there any health problems for the birds?
No, not really. It's just sugar.
Uh-huh.
And peanut butter, you know, it's a lot of protein,
Uh-huh. Sure.
a
Okay.
little bit of
The,
sugar.
the peanut butter is just basically ground peanuts, and they
Yeah.
Sure.
They do add a little
for the
sugar to it, but
yeah, for the ones that take nuts and all,
yeah.
but they're
Uh,
fine.
Okay.
Jack, I think Steve was also asking about the frequency of cleaning.
Yes, I clean my feeders religiously twice a week, especially the nectar feeders.
The
Actually,
thanks
the
for
nectar
feeding-
feeders I clean every day when I put new nectar in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, especially if it's hot, because
Yeah,
it tends to get bad.
yeah,
If it's cold, it's almost like having it in the fridge, so you can probably, get by a little bit better,
yeah.
longer.
And you notice I have several of them in the shade, so they don't get that mold or mildew in them very quickly. Because this time of year it can come fast.
So you're spending a lot of time.
I do. Especially now, since my wife is at the Galapagos today. But usually we take turns.
Yeah. I clean my bird baths pretty much every day because the birds are not very clean when they're around the bird baths.
No, they're not. And you can get algae really fast.
Yeah.
You can put pieces of copper tubing and little flat pieces of copper in your bird baths, and that will keep the algae out for a while. But as soon as it gets a little patina on it, it stops working. So you have to take it out and sand it down a little bit to get that copper, and then it'll keep the algae down again.
I just got a hammered copper bird bath, which doesn't seem like I have to clean it as often.
Yeah.
It's solid copper, so.
I mean, like for pond management, unfortunately, one of the things that they've used in the past is a copper sulfate spray to kill weeds and things, which is just bad for everything. But regular copper is not going to hurt them.
Okay. Well, last question I wrote down was, do you ever use the mechanical shutter or is it strictly electronic?
I only use mechanical shutter when I'm doing flash.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I could just add to that, the and I think Jack will probably agree. The electronic shutter on the Canon 5D Mark II works really well because it's a stacked sensor. And there's
Correct.
very little rolling shutter. The other Canon mirrorless, like the 7D and I think the older 5D, had
Yes.
rolling shutter problems. And so that I think we have more of a tendency to use mechanical shutter with those.
Or the hybrid, which is like half and half. Yeah. We did that a lot previously. Now I don't worry about it. And that's why I moved to the Canon 5D Mark II or R5 Mark II is because of the rolling shutter issues I had previously, because I shoot a lot of hummingbirds.
Yeah, the advantage of the electronic shutter too is that you can either go totally silent shutter, or you can set the volume and make the
Yes,
volume really minimal, so you could just barely hear it.
right. Yeah, I
Let,
think
let me just let
Tom,
me
don't
just
you like to hear your shutter?
I do.
I thought so.
It's not loud,
No.
but I sometimes wonder if the camera is actually working when there's no sound at all.
That's a problem. Let me just add quickly that the used to be Audubon, now it's the Tucson Bird Alliance Festival's beginning, I think, next week or the week after next, beginning like the 6th of August. And they will have a lot of vendors there, including I think used to be Olympus, now it's OM. And if you're an OM shooter or you're interested in it, I think they were actually lending equipment at one of the festivals. Also, Swirsky is there with the binoculars, and also there's spotting scopes. And they were emphasizing a lot of digiscoping things at that time. And I think some of the vendors go out on some of the bird trips. So even if you're not inclined to jam yourself into a van and spend money to go out, looking for birds in the heat and the humidity and the rain and all, you can get a pass, if you will, or just go to the conference, if you will, and without going on any of the trips. I'm not sure how much it runs, and be able to see whatever they're offering in that area, but also be able to walk through the vendor exhibits.
Hmm. I think read that Hunts was going to be there again.
Yeah, I'm sure they
Hunt
will be. Yeah.
Photography sells pretty much anything. If they don't have it, you can order it through them and they'll ship it to you. I've dealt with them quite a bit when I was on the East Coast, and they were really, really good.
Yeah, they are. I've ordered from them too.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Gary, one of the salesmen I dealt with at some of the Carolina nature photography
They're scary.
things, I don't know if he's going to be coming or not.
They were at the Nampa meeting.
Oh, were they? Okay.
Yeah, it's $30 to just have an admission, and you can go in all 4 of the days. Quite a few of the free presentations are already full because I only signed up today, but there's still quite a bit there. Most of the photography ones, or several of the photography ones, are not full.
Hmm, it's interesting. I don't know. It's quite a haul for me. I feel like I'm driving all the way to California to go there.
Just take
Yeah,
a
it's
plane.
gonna be
Just
at the
take a plane.
DoubleTree in Midtown.
Yeah, it's a haul for me.
I'm going to make a last call for questions
Oh, sure.
and then call stop the recording. So yeah, any more questions? We can continue the conversation for sure, but I just wanted to. Uh,
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah,
okay.
Eric.
Hey, Jack, how do you, when you're out there doing bird photography, how do you deal with binoculars and do you carry them? How do you carry them while you're kind of juggling your camera or not? I've been struggling a little bit with how to do that.
I take my wife.
Ah, very clever.
Now, normally when I'm just shooting birds, I don't take binoculars. I
Okay.
figure I've got enough telephoto range on my camera, and I just use that.
Okay.
Eric, I carry a smaller pair around my neck sometimes because I find it a little easier to scan around with the binoculars sometimes than my big lens. But
Yeah, that's a little bit how I feel about that is I find it easier sometimes to find the birds if I'm looking for something in like particular with to scan with the binoculars and then bring the kind of like the camera and lens to bear on it.
Yeah, I have in the past. Um, I have a think tank belt that you can put all kinds of things on,
Hmm.
pouches and things.
Yeah.
And I've had a pouch with where I put the binoculars in the pouch and taken that with me.
Yeah,
Jack, doesn't
I've used a like a hip pouch where I put the binoculars in there, but I feel like I'm kind of like juggling that in the camera sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
a bit of it's, so I recently picked up like what's the guy's name? Rick Young, oh, anyway, it's a very lightweight little binocular harness that I can fit that where the binoculars hang on my chest,
Mm.
but don't like dangle and swing around and everything. So I can just kind of let go of them and they'll pop into place on my chest and I can use the camera.
Yeah,
It seems,
I use a cotton carrier, so that doesn't quite work for me.
But Jack, there's a cotton carrier that also has a binocular clip, right?
Yeah, but I'm going to use mine till it dies.
The problem I've always had with carrying binoculars is I'm afraid that by the time I get the binoculars on the bird will have disappeared
Right?
before I can get the camera up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
some of the birds are moving so fast
And so
that
spooky.
and because it's a big advantage of being with someone else who's a good birder who has binoculars. And you can even, I can pick out movement someplace, but there's someone else who's scanning and saying, sometimes even identifying the species, and then you can begin to find it with your camera. So that's the advantage of being in a small group.
Yeah, and your wife is perfect for that.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. Yes.
She's awesome.
Thank you. I agree.
Yeah, I've seen her in action. It's
But don't forget, August 4th at Henry's at 8:30.
8:30 on the 4th.
I'll shoot you an email, Henry, when I know for sure if I can make it.
Okay.
May the fourth be with us.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's my anniversary.
Oh. And she will be home by then.
Yeah, May the 4th is my anniversary.
May,
I'll never forget it.
May the 4th be with you.
Lovely chat, but I want to kill the recording. Any more questions? Okay.